The name of my company is Video Production News, a professional news gathering service. That's how it should be read and that's how it should be said.
Welcome to Highly Serious, a professional news gathering service. I'm your host, Craig Anthony Marshall. We'll be jumping back into the top 15 live-action superhero films shortly. Coming up, we have numbers 14 and numbers 13. But first, I just want to clarify. This YouTube channel won't just be about superhero films or comic books.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration? Oh, you were finished. Oh, well, allow me to retort.
We're going to be talking about all cinema. I'm hoping this YouTube channel can expand and become an open dialogue on cinema and pop culture as a whole. Actually, my favorite director of all time is Quentin Tarantino, and he's never even done a superhero film. I also love directors like Martin Scorsese, Wes Anderson, Stanley Kubrick, Edgar Wright, anything written by Charlie Kaufman, as well as TV shows like The Wire, Breaking Bad, Broad City, Black Mirror, and Stranger Things. I'm hoping to do essays on Goodfellas, Kill Bill, Game of Thrones, and Black Mirror. So I'm hoping to do a lot more content than just superhero films. I do love superhero films, I do love comics, it's just that I'm going to be covering all film, TV, and pop culture. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any suggestions for content that you want to see, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'm hoping you guys will tune in and join me on this journey. So without further delay, here's number 14 on the top 15 live-action superhero films list. I was a very big fan of the X-Men growing up. That was the comic book I literally could not wait to get every single month. Chris Claremont is probably my favorite comic book writer of all time. He had this epic run from 1975 to 1991. X2 gets a lot of things right and it improves upon the formula in the first X-Men movie. I feel like Bryan Singer really started to hit his stride making these movies. It was, to me, better than the first X-Men, and it's still superior to X-Men Days of Future Past. I love Days of Future Past, by the way. I think it's a great movie. I read the comic book, big fan of the comic book. I just feel like X2 is Bryan Singer's best work in this realm. I mean, they're all good. Maybe not X-Men Apocalypse, okay? Maybe not X-Men Apocalypse. I watched X2 recently and I was amazed that the special effects still hold up. I mean, the costume design is a little bit dated because, you know, current superhero movies, they really lean into the superhero look, you know, with capes and colorful costumes. They didn't do that in the early 2000s. Other than that, the special effects still look pretty good. Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler was dead on. When Nightcrawler attacks the Oval Office in the opening scene, it is epic. One of the things I love about it is that they were actually able to capture what it looks like when Nightcrawler teleports. That's actually very hard to do because in the comic book, it's not necessarily abstract. It seemed like the teleportation that was going on in the comic book would be impossible to translate to film, and Bryan Singer somehow was able to capture that. Mystique, played by Rebecca Roman, plays a much bigger role in X2 than in the first film. I love all her side missions. She has to break Magneto out of his plastic prison cell by seducing a prison security guard, but my favorite scene in the whole film is when she has to break into Stryker's fortress at Alkali Lake through the spillway disguised as Wolverine. The guards realize she's not Wolverine, they try to kill her, she starts whooping ass all over the base, and then she does that cool looking slide through the closing doors while flipping the bird. What is that? It just looks cool. Kelly Yu as Lady Deathstrike was magnificent. I just wish that there was more of her. They took away some extravagances of the look, but again, it was early 2000, actually 2003 to be precise. X2 does a good job of kind of like separating the levels of villaindom in their film. You have Magneto, who's kind of evil, but not really. He's actually a nice guy if you get to know him. But then you have William Stryker, adeptly played by Brian Cox, who is like pure evil. He's imprisoned Magneto, has him trapped in a plastic cell, he's torturing him, interrogating him. He's just not a chill dude. Dude has zero chill in him. Hugh Jackman, man. I don't know if there's ever been a better casting for a superhero than Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Patrick Stewart as Professor X is probably the only guy that can rival Hugh Jackman as Wolverine as like dead on. X-Men was my favorite comic book back in the day and Bryan Singer nailed it. I just feel like X2 is Bryan Singer's best X-Men movie. So X2 is number 14 on our live action superhero films list. What do you guys think? SpiderMan Homecoming is the closest thing you'll ever get to a John Hughes superhero film. It has elements of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Weird Science, and Pretty in Pink. It was superbly done, and I love the little touches, the little nuances of this film. One of the things I enjoyed about this film is that Peter Parker, played by Tom Holland, actually has a New York accent, and he's British in real life. But this is the first time in any Spider-Man film that he actually has a New York accent. Neither Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield ever had accents. Growing up, my favorite cartoon was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Don't judge me. But in the cartoon, Spider-Man gets his crime-fighting equipment from Tony Stark. So I thought it was kind of a cool callback to actually have him in Spider-Man Homecoming. I know they didn't plan it that way, it's just a cool callback. I love how grounded Michael Keaton's Vulture is. He's not a scientist or some sort of super genius, he's just a blue-collar salvage guy. It makes him more down-to-earth and believable. They also did a great job of making his character very menacing. Michael Keaton has come full circle from playing Batman to playing this really grounded villain. He was a guy that's just trying to, make a living for his family. I was never really a fan of the Vulture in the comic book. He was kind of like this grumpy old guy that kind of looks like Mr. Magoo in a Vulture suit. He never really felt like a threat to me. And the way that they portrayed him in the movie really made me feel like he was a threat to Spider-Man. There might be some Vulture apologists out there in the world. There might be some people that are like, the Vulture is the greatest guy in all of villaindom. Just not to me. The costume design is really on point in this film. I love that they mimicked the fur collar around the Vulture's neck with fur around the neck of his Sherlin coat. They even successfully captured the look of Spider-Man's eyes in this film. Spider-Man has been drawn by so many different artists in the comic books, and they always made his eyes different sizes. They solved this plot hole by making his eyes goggles that readjust themselves. So sometimes he looks like Spider-Man as drawn by Todd McFarlane, and other times he looks like Spider-Man as drawn by Steve Ditko. My only complaint was that his outfit was a little bit too powerful. I wish they would have focused more on Spider-Man and his powers instead of kind of like an overpowered Spider-Man suit, but I still thought it was a good film. This movie just had a really authentic New York vibe to it. Some of my favorite scenes are him just goofing off in the city, like, sitting on top of a train car riding it, or doing backflips for some vendor that's selling hot dogs. Those are just nice little touches. The other Spider-Man films always felt like a touristy version of New York to me. Spider-Man Homecoming really feels like the authentic New York experience. I know it's a superhero film and there's nothing authentic about it, but all things considered, it faithfully captures the vibe of what it's like to live in New York. So that's numbers 14 and 13. X2, XMen United, and SpiderMan Homecoming. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below.